as Israel is still reeling from the devastating onslaught of October 7th, in which 1,200 Israelis were slaughtered by Hamas terrorists, most of them civilians murdered in their homes, including infants, babies, children, women, elderly, men. Questions about the colossal intelligence failure continue to echo and will be present in the Israeli debate in years to come. One person who could shed some light on what led to this failure is Dr. Ofer Grosbard, a clinical psychologist and author of the Cultural Code series published by Ben-Gurion University. Dr. Grosbard, you served as a psychologist in the Israeli military intelligence and have recently published an article that details some of the structural issues that led to the intelligence failure. Welcome on the show. Try to break down for us, what did you learn during your service?
Hello. I learned many things. There are two aspects to what I learned. One aspect is looking inside us, the organization, our intelligence, and the other side, looking outside about the enemy. So it's simpler to talk about us because the problem is that the Israeli intelligence is constructed by a group of quite young people, very talented people, but mainly with analytical thinking, and their social skills are less developed, either because they are young or because they are very analytical. And we are a startup nation, and maybe we still have the feeling that technology is the last word and can solve too many problems. So this is not true, of course. And so one problem is relying too much on technology. The other problem is Israel is quite a creative place, but in the army, in the pyramid of the army, especially the intelligence, which is the brain of the army and the state, people are not open enough and not thinking openly and creatively enough because it's an army and they want to, to advance with the ranks. And sometimes saying what you think openly doesn't help this aim. So I think the intelligence needs help in order to be more flattened, which means that people could say what they think and without any fear. And that was my impression from working at a short time, relatively, that I worked with them. And this is two things that are directed inside. The problem outside is maybe even bigger, The problem that you project onto the enemy your own thinking. And we think as a modern Western country, but the other side think differently. And there is a field called cross-cultural psychology, and a lot was written about it in the world, but my impression is that not just intelligence, but all the security bodies in Israel are not aware to those things. And the result is that the other side think differently, For example, we are talking about deterrence, okay? So I'm not going to attack anybody if the damage I will have is greater than the advantage I will get, okay? This is analytical thinking, modern Western. But what if the other side think about along different lines? He thinks about humiliation and honor, for example, okay? So it's a different perspective, it's a different frame of reference, and we are not aware of it. Sadat attacked Israel after our 6-day war, which was a huge success, okay? Because he wanted to rehabilitate Egypt's honor. So we expected a big deterrence, as in this massacre, and there is no deterrence because the other think differently. For the other, sometimes it's more important to damage you than to do something good for him. It's opposite than our thinking. You are more important. Your failure or your damage is more important than his success. Okay, so
Perhaps as former late Prime Minister Golda Meir said, peace will come when they love their children more than they hate us. And in this case, this is what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's a nice analogy, of course. I agree. Yeah.
Unfortunately, and this is what we saw, because when Hamas launched this attack, it knew very well what sort of damage it would cause to Israel, but beyond that, also understood what sort of devastation it will bring to the people of Gaza, as unfortunately we have to see today as Israel has to eliminate Hamas, and we see what sort of suffering is resulted from that. Obviously, Hamas brought it on its own people. Talk to us about the failure of this concept. There's a lot of talk about the concept that Hamas is deterred, that Hamas will not attack Israel. I was sitting here in studio on October 6th with a very high-ranking former IDF officer who repeated the same claims, that this was the norm, this was the thinking, both in the military and in the government. It seems like everyone fell in love with this idea.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, it went for a long time, this love of this idea. You know, conception is something that give you peace of mind. I have a conception, I understand what happens. You know, it's difficult for anyone to be to experience a threat as Israel does for a long time. You get tired, and conception is something that, you know, it make you being more tranquil or calm down or things like this. You can't be for a long time with a high adrenaline, let's say. And so we have to be very careful of our conception. Always to live under the thought that someone else wants to destroy you, it's not easy. But the point is that we should study the different way of thinking. That's the point that we don't do. Okay, this is not only a problem of Israel. You see, Iran and America, Iran and Western Europe. Iran is playing with all kinds of games and tricks and lies, and again the West falls in this trap. So it's very difficult. It's to explain it. It's a long conversation. It's very difficult to the West and also to Israel, which is part of the West, to get rid of what I call the illusion of peace or the illness of peace, I would say, because it's illness, you know. So when you look at it, we have to learn the other, the Hamas thinking along traditional collective lines. It's a different way of thinking, you know. The group is important, not the individual, and it makes all your thinking different, okay? So I say in a few words something that is quite complicated, but what you see outside, the lies, the tricks, the honor issues. What is honor? Think about honor. Honor is something that you get from outside. It's kind of a food you get from outside, okay? But we in the West would like to fulfill ourselves. It's coming from inside. So, and for them, the most important thing is honor versus not humiliation. Many times they say, just not humiliation. We are ready for everything, just not humiliation. So we have to learn the way they think. And if we learn it, we understand that we don't deter them because they are thinking differently. They don't mind to ruin the whole Gaza, as you see in these pictures. They don't mind, the people, not at all. Okay.
And of course, we also saw such incredible support in surveys after this onslaught, support among the Palestinian public, not just in Gaza, also in the West Bank. Even after the devastation already started, many in the Palestinian streets still justified, well, not many, I'm talking about 80% of the people who were interviewed in this survey that supported this onslaught. What do you make of that, about the complete different thinking on the Palestinian street, and what is that related to?
I'll tell you something. When you do a survey, here is something very important. In the Arab world, often you don't get the right answer. People say, people know that their neighbors are going to listen to them, seeing them on TV or radio or whatever, and they say what is expected from them, what is the group expecting. We are in the West, will say what we think, okay? But they say what is expected, what is the group is expecting. It's a different way of thinking. For example, when you interview, when you make a survey of Arabs, what broadcast, what media you watch. So if the interviewer is Israeli, Jewish Israelis, they will say some Israeli channels. If the interviewer is from Arab country, they will say Al Jazeera or something like this. So you see, they adjust themselves all the time to the group, to others. So they say, okay, they're afraid of Hamas, and so they say so. And now when they're not afraid, you see, many of them in Gaza say we are against Hamas. Suddenly you hear these voices because the fear is disappeared, and then they can say something more authentic.
Obviously, also related to communal thinking and to the teaching that they're being given in schools and part of the socialization process, etc.
Incitement is the most important thing. We have to confront it because what we see is mainly because of the incitement.
And very briefly, how would you change the Israeli intelligence, these groups that make all these decisions? How can Israel's intelligence and Israel as a whole rebuild itself ahead of the future challenges? What lessons will be learned? Very briefly.
I hope for the two aspects that I said. First of all, looking inside, it should be more flattened, less. I mean, it's something. If you want to be creative and think openly, you have to challenge the ranks. Something that is upper than you. So this is one thing that Israel should learn, to be the intelligence. Israel is quite open, but the intelligence should be much more open. And the other side, to really learn cross-cultural psychology, to learn deeply how the other side think, and don't think they think like you, because they don't think like you. They think on different lines.
Absolutely fascinating, and sad that we have to have this conversation following the tragedy and the colossal failure of the intelligence. Dr. Ofer Grosbard is clinical psychologist. We thank you very much for your insight today.
Thank you.
Thank you.